Welcome back to the Credible Dev YouTube channel. Today I got something special for you. I learned something new last night. I've always wanted a Synology, but the cost has always been a barrier for me. And last night I stumbled across a solution to be able to get this up and running in Proxmox. You could also do this on bare metal hardware, but what we're going to be talking about today is doing this in Proxmox on a VM. So I'm excited to show this to you. Many of you may already know this or have done it yourself. So I apologize if I'm late to the party. But before we get into it, I just want to thank all the new subscribers. I want to thank you for checking out my videos, hitting that like button. We're almost at 1,000 subs, and I can't be more excited for that. So thank you to everybody. Let's go ahead and jump into today's video. So like I said, we're going to be setting up a Synology NAS on Proxmox inside of a VM. And this is possible through a couple of specialized bootloaders that are available. And the DSM or Disk Station Manager software is actually open source, and I think there's some controversy around that because they use a GPL license, but they don't want people using it. I don't know. So this is kind of a gray area thing, I guess you could say. And Synology has came out, according to a couple of blogs, and said, do not do this. It's not acceptable. It violates our terms of use, blah, 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 blah. So if you're going to do this, I suggest you only do it in a home lab environment on a temporary basis. You don't want to have this running long term because you're violating their terms of service. If you want to use it long term, go out and buy the Synology. But if you want to test it out like me and just get to know how it works and expand your knowledge on it, then sure, go ahead and try this out. And if you run a business, not sure if I mentioned that, certainly do not do this at all. Like I said, we have a couple of bootloaders, and there may be more than these two, but I only looked at two of them. And the first one is this automated red pill loader, and it hasn't been updated since February, but I did try it out on my initial run through on this, and it worked perfectly fine. So this is one option. And the other option is ARC, and it's also ARC red pill loader for DSM. That's the Disk Station Manager, which is Synology's OS, basically. And the bootloader tricks the DSM software into thinking that the underlying device, in our case a VM, is an actual Synology piece of hardware. So that's the purpose of the bootloader here. And then the DSM software gets installed, and that gives you the OS that you would have on a typical Synology. Of course, Synology services you're not going to have access to because the serial number for your device is not going to be a legitimate serial number. There may be something to do with the MAC address. I'm not 100% sure there, but definitely the serial number. You're not going to be able to access certain services like the active backup, for instance. But I believe you are able to use the surveillance tools that are in there. I haven't tested that out. I don't have any of that kind of equipment in my home to be able to test it out right now, but I've read that you are able to use those features. So just keep that in mind as you're setting this up. So like I said, I tried both of these. They worked perfectly fine for me, setting them up on Proxmox. The setup experience is kind of the same up until a certain point. There are a couple of differences, but they're not any big differences at all. Regardless of which one of these that you choose, you're probably going to be able to follow this guide. But the ARC one is more updated. You can see it just had a release yesterday. So I would suggest trying it out first. And if you have problems with it, you're not able to get it to work, maybe then you try out the other one. So this is the one we're going to be using for the video today. And to get started, you're going to download the latest release here. When you go to the release page, the one that we're going to want is the top one here that ends in .img.zip. So you're going to download that, and you're going to extract it, and it's going to have a .img file in it, and that's what we're going to upload to Proxmox. So you should be familiar with this. If you're not, you can go check out my Proxmox video. I kind of go over uploading ISOs and images and stuff like that in that video. I have it linked down below. And if you don't have Proxmox already, you can check out that video, and it'll get you started as well. So you can see I've already uploaded both of these image files. But basically, you just go to your storage, and it depends. You may have it in a different place. I keep most of mine here, but you may have yours in local. Either way, click upload, and upload the .img file. And then from there, we're going to need to create a VM, and we're going to make a few modifications to it. We're going to jump into the Proxmox shell, and we're going to run a few commands there in order to attach this image file as a hard disk on the VM. And then we're also going to be passing through a couple of hard disks that I have physically in the Proxmox server. So if we take a look at the disk on my server, these last two disks here, they're both 2 terabyte. These are the two that we're going to pass through to actually use as volumes on the Synology. So like I said, to get started, we're going to create a VM first. So we'll right click on Proxmox and I'll click create VM. We'll just keep the default number that it gives there and give it a name. You can name it whatever you want. For the OS page, we're going to choose do not use any media because we're not going to be booting up from any ISO file or anything like that. For the system, keep everything the default here. On the disk page, we're going to remove this SCSI device here because we're going to be manually attaching disk to the VM. For the CPU, we'll give it 2 cores. For the memory, you want to do 4 gigabytes minimum. So we'll change that. For our network, you can make changes here if you want. I'm going to change this to the VMX Net 3 adapter. And if you need to change anything else here, such as choosing a different interface, you can do that. Otherwise, just go ahead and hit next. And then we'll hit finish, and we'll wait for that to create the VM. And once this finishes, we'll hop into the shell and we'll run a few commands here. All right, so it looks like that's done. So we'll go ahead and hop into the shell here. Now, the first thing that we need to do is import that bootloader image into the VM that we just created. So first you have to find where that image file is, and it could be in a few different places. For me, it's going to be in mount, and I think it's PVE. Oops. And there's my ISO storage. That's going to be template and ISO. So we can see here that I have that arc.img file. For you, it might be in cd var, I think it's lib vz maybe, and then template, and then ISO. So it could be here for you or somewhere else. You'll have to figure that out, but check out those 2 places, might be where it is. Of course, your folder names, when it comes to like this ISO storage folder, it might be different. So let's go back where mine is. All right. So we have the arc.img file here. And if you are going with the other bootloader, you'll have this ARPL file, but we're going to be using the arc one here. So we type in qm disk import, and then we use our VM number, our VM ID, which in our case was 107. So 107, and then arc.img, that's the image file. And then this next one's going to be the storage that we want to put this on. And I want to put it on DS1. And you can see over here, this is where I want this hard disk to be created. So we'll go ahead and hit enter on that. And once that's finished, we will have an attached device. So if we go to the device and we go to hardware, we'll see this unused disk here. So you need to click on that. You can click on edit. And we want to change this to SATA, and we want to change this. In my case, I'm going to go with write back. Now, if you're not sure what to do here, there is a page which I'll link down below, which covers what exactly these mean. So write back is going to be fast, but you could lose data on a power outage. So choose what's best for you there, and then we'll hit add. So now we can see we have a SATA 0 device. So now we need to add the other 2 hard disks that we're going to use. And you may have 1 disk or 3 or 4 disks, whatever for your case. But for mine, I have 2 disks that I want to add to this Synology. So if we go to disk, the 2 disks I was showing you earlier is dev SDE and SDF. So we want to find the IDs of these two disks, and then we'll add them as SATA devices. So we'll go back to the shell, and we want to find the ID of these devices. So we'll type in ls space -l, and then dev/disk/by ID. If I could spell, that would be great. So it's going to spit out a bunch of stuff depending on what you have set up on your Proxmox. But if you scroll up, you're going to see all the different disks that are available in your system. And here we can see SDF and SDE, which I was talking about a moment ago. So we want to copy this part of it right here. And you're going to want to paste that somewhere, keep it handy because we're going to be using these in the next step. So I'm going to copy both of these and store those off to the side. And then we're going to want to attach these drives. And we do that by running qm set and then our VM ID, which was 107. And then we're going to make these SATA drives, and this first one's going to be SATA 1 because we already have SATA 0. And then we're going to do dev/disk/by ID/ and then we're going to paste in that value that we just copied. On that, now we need to do the same thing again for the second disk or however many disks that you have. You just want to make sure you change the SATA number. We're going to change that to SATA 2. And then we need to update this ID here. And we'll paste that in and hit enter. All right. So now we have all of our drives attached. So we'll go back to the device and we can see these two new drives that we have here. Now, the next thing that we need to do is make sure that this SATA 0 one is what boots, because that has the bootloader on it. So we'll go into options and then boot order, and we'll uncheck these. We'll check the SATA 0 one and just go ahead and move it up to the top and hit OK. Now, one thing I'm going to do, this isn't required, but I want to give this a static IP address. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to copy this MAC address. And then I want to go over to pfSense, and you can go to services if you have pfSense, and you can go to the DHCP server and scroll all the way down to the bottom and click on add, and we'll paste in that MAC address. Then I'll give it an IP address there. And our host name is going to be Synology, and we'll hit save. That way, when the VM comes up, it'll have that IP address. So now we can go ahead and go to the console and we can start it up. And you can either press enter on this or you can just wait a couple of seconds and it'll boot automatically. Detected our network card, wait for it to get an IP address, and you can see it got the static IP that I gave it. Now here's where it's a little different depending on which one of the bootloaders that you chose. They both have a graphical interface, but with the other bootloader, you have to go to an IP address in your browser with a specific port in order to get to this interface, and you manage it from there. With this one, it just takes you right into it. So we're going to choose the model, and this is the Synology model. Now the one that I'm going to choose is the DS423 Plus, and that is the disk station DS423 Plus at the 4-bay. That's the one that we are going to choose. You can choose whichever one's most appropriate for you here. But enter on that. This is talking about the disk station manager software, whether you want 7.1 or 7.2. We'll choose the latest. And it's detecting 3 disks. That's going to be the disk that the bootloader's on, and then the 2 disks that I attached. We'll hit enter. Now here's some additional modules and things that are extensions that you can add. I'm not going to add anything here, but you may need to, like the NVMe cache. If you have NVMe drive that you've also attached that you want to use as a cache device, you could do that here or whatever other options. You can check out in the wiki, which I'll have linked down below, what all these do if you need more explanation on it. So we're just going to go ahead and hit enter. Enter again. And then it's asking us if we want to build the bootloader. We're going to say yes. Now it's asking if we want to boot into the bootloader, which we do. Go ahead and hit yes to that. And then you'll wait a minute and your VM will reboot. Now you can either wait a few seconds here, you can go ahead and press enter on boot DSM. Now this address here, the IP address that you either assigned to it or that it got from DHCP, and then port 5000, that's where you're going to be able to connect to the website in order to finish setting it up. It also brings up this about going to finds.synology.com. I didn't need to do that in my experience, but you may need to. If you go to that site, it's going to search your network for where this Synology device is. But for my case, I'm just going to go ahead and pull up this address here. So we'll go to a new tab here and paste that in. And it recognizes that Synology DS423 Plus, which is what I selected during the bootloader configuration. We'll hit install. We'll keep this option to automatically download and install the latest DSM. Hit next. It's warning us that the data on those drives will be deleted. We understand. We have to confirm by typing the model in. So we'll do that. And then it'll take a few moments here for it to do the install, and then it'll restart it. And then you'll be presented with the login or the account setup page and the rest of the Disk Station Manager setup. So I'll go ahead and jump to that. All right, so this is the page you should come to whenever the setup is complete. So go ahead and click on Start. And we need to give the device a name. Just keep it consistent with what we did in Proxmox. An administrator account. A super secure password. And then we'll hit Next. Now, on this option, you want to make sure you click on Notify Me when DSM or package updates are available, and I will install them manually. And this is because of the whole bootloader situation and everything we have set up. If you let it automatically install updates, it's possible that it could brick the system, and you're going to have to set it up again. And we are not going to create a Synology account because you're not going to be able to link this Synology to that account anyways because of the whole serial number thing. So we will skip that. We don't want to do the analytics, so we'll just hit submit. And here it's asking if it wants us to install these. I haven't tested these out, so I'm not sure whether they work properly in this kind of setup. Feel free to try those and let us know in the comments, but right now I'm not 100% sure. So we'll hit no thanks. Enable multi-factor authentication, great thing to do. You should do that. We're not going to do it for the purposes of the video. And another warning about that. Okay. Now create a storage pool and volume. So we'll click on create now. Start. This is going to be the RAID type. If you're not familiar with these, you can kind of go through them and they give you a description. For most people, it's probably going to be the SHR. If we go over to their website, which I'll link this down below, you get a description of each one of them, as along with the Synology Hybrid RAID, which is that SHR. That's the one I'm going to choose for this video. We'll hit next. We need to check the drives that we're going to add to this pool. So we'll check both drives, hit next. We'll skip the drive check. And then modify allocated size. We'll just change this to max. And then we're going to use ButterFS so we can have the snapshots and stuff like that. Then next. We're not going to encrypt it right now. Maybe something that you want to consider. We'll hit next. And then we'll hit apply. It warns us again that all the data is going to be erased. Okay. It'll take just a moment to set up, depending on how many drives you chose and the size of the drives. And once everything's set up, you'll be able to see the 2 drives and that you have a storage pool created. If you go to the overview, you get a little picture of the Synology, and this would look different depending on which model that you chose. And now we have healthy drives in Bay 1 and 2. So from here, you can go ahead and start exploring in the DSM OS. And you have a control panel. You can come in here and you can change things like network settings and whether you want it to be available externally. All sorts of stuff in here to play with. And I haven't dove too deep into these yet outside of just creating a share. So if you go to share folder and you click on create, you can create a share folder. This would be like for a SMB share, NFS share, things like that. Give it a name. Let's call it test. You can give it a description if you want. If you had more than one volume created, you could choose it here. We only have one. And then you have a couple of other options here that you can set up for your specific use case. Like if you don't want it to show up in my network places on Windows, stuff like that. We'll go ahead and hit next. And you can set up encryption. We're not going to do that, so we'll just skip it. And we can set up a data checksum to validate the integrity of the data. And we can enable a quota. We're not going to do any of that here. Hit next. Here you grant your permissions. We will grant this user that I created, read write, and we'll say that nobody else has access. So now that is created the share folder. And if we go to file services, when you see that SMB is enabled, NFS is not currently enabled, but let's try to connect to this new SMB share that I just created. So we will go to SMB : // then we need the IP address, and we'll go to test, like that. And we are a registered user, and this is going to be the user on Synology. And there we go. We're connected to the SMB share that we just created. So that's going to be it for this video. Expect some more videos possibly about the Synology as I kind of explore with it and learn more about it. If you have experiences you want to share down below that might help other people, or you got some information that's pretty cool about Synology that you want to let everybody know about, leave a comment down below. We would all appreciate it. Again, thank you for checking out this video, subscribing to my channel. Be sure to hit that like button if this video helped you out or you just found it interesting. That's all I got for you today. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I'll see you in the next one.